Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Queen of Hearts by Natalina Reis, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. The King of Hearts called on the tarts and beat the Queen full sore. The Queen of Hearts nearly fell apart and vowed she'd be beaten no more. The Queen of Hearts, she played her cards while poisoning the wine away, and fed it to every King of Hearts who enjoyed chasing their queens like prey. Chapter 2. Ace in the Hole. Feigned sympathy was always part of the act. "It's okay, it happens to everyone," Mimi would say. "Just go home and rest, and you'll be back to normal in no time." Except they wouldn't. These men, these cads who thought nothing of betraying and abusing their wives or girlfriends, would never be able to have sex again. Oh, they could try, and she didn't doubt they would over and over again, but they'd never achieve their dearest desire, the mighty erection. She had made sure of that as she sprinkled her secret concoction of herbs in their wine. Lulled by her coquettish flirtation, her beauty, and their own cockiness, she had yet to have any problem dragging them to her chambers with the veiled promise of sex, feed them the poison, and then watch them in dark delight trying to work themselves into wood. Only her training and experience as an actress kept her from laughing in their faces. "Oh, your wife must be very disappointed," she said as the most recent victim of her herbal mix hurried to get dressed, face scarlet with embarrassment or anger, possibly both. He was a decent card player, and she didn't have to use her usual tricks to lose that game. His handsome face had lit up as that last card was slapped on the table announcing his victory. The prize for winning was always a visit to her chambers upstairs. Mimi Mayoyo had done this for so long now, everything went down like a well-orchestrated symphony or a beautifully choreographed dance. The cad would follow her. She'd start the teas by removing a couple clothing items, pour the doctored wine, and it was the beginning of the man's demise. She'd never kill them, no matter how much she hated them for the pain and humiliation they caused the women they were supposed to love and protect. Death was an easy way out. She wanted to hit them where it hurt the most, and for these men it was all below the belt. You're not going to tell anybody about this, are you?" he said predictably. The man prided himself on his powerful cock and how many women he could pleasure with it. Amongst his peers, he was well known for his sexual prowess. At home, he was known as the tormentor, the man who gloated about his sexual conquests to his wife, and then blackmailed her into doing things she did not want to do. She nodded noncommittally and watched him leave in a hurry, still struggling with the buttons on his pants. Good riddance. Another job well done. The sad part was that her job was never done. These unfaithful, often abusive men kept coming, a never-ending flow of pricks begging to be punished. A knock on the door made her snap off her thoughts. "Come in," she commanded, knowing only one person would dare come knocking at her door. Little Megan walked in with a submissive stoop to her back, her pale blue eyes downcast as usual. "Your supplier is here," she said, never raising her eyes. Mimi studied the girl's face. It still made her blood boil every time she laid eyes on little Megan, her pretty face marred by a scar that ran all the way from her hairline to her chin, crossing over the corner of her eye and lips, courtesy of her husband. "Look at me when you speak, Megan," she said, much more harshly than she meant to. She wanted the young woman to stop being so subservient, to love and believe in herself, but that was one job Mimi was tragically failing at. Little Megan bit her lips, clenching her hands so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Sorry, Mimi," she hurried to say, never once looking up. The Queen of Hearts, a title she had earned throughout the last year, sighed. "No need to apologize. I'm the one who is at fault here." Standing up, she covered her bare shoulders with a translucent black shawl. "Bring him up." The girl turned to leave, but Mimi stopped her. "And bring some hot tea, will you?" Little Megan nodded and left. Mimi looked around, scanning the room for evidence of her recent activities, but other than a neck scarf the cat had left on the floor and a slightly ruffled bed, there wasn't much. She picked up the scarf and threw it in the trash bin before pulling on the edges of the bed linens and smoothing them out with a hand. A quick glance at the mirror showed that not a strand of her bright red hair was out of place. Satisfied, she blinked her blue eyes and sat back on her armchair, the only comfort she allowed herself in that den of iniquity. Living there was a deliberate choice, like a spider. She needed a proper web to catch her prey, and a house of gambling and prostitution was perfect for it. There was a light rap on the door, and before she could say anything, the small arched door opened. A tall, handsome man with the eyes of a cat ducked under the low archway and stepped into the room. "You're not Alphonse." She couldn't hide her surprise. Her supplier was an older man with a limp left from a childhood disease. Either he had made a bargain with a witch, or this was a totally different man. He glanced at her, lips so full and perfectly shaped, she felt the stirrings of something she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for informing me of that," he quipped, his lips curved into a lopsided smile. Once all the way inside, he straightened to his full height and strode toward her, a tiger ready to pounce. Mimi's head swam as she took him all in, heat running through her veins. "My name is Jacques Tourville. You can call me Jack. Alphonse has met with some bad luck lately, and he won't be coming for a long while." "Bad luck? What exactly happened to him?" Not that she was too attached to the man, but she was used to him and knew she could trust him to be discreet about her orders. A new player at this stage of the game was not ideal. "Never mind. The question is, can I trust you to keep our dealings away from the public eye?" Without waiting for an invitation, the man dropped onto the only other chair in the room, its legs groaning under his weight. Jacques was not only quite a few inches over 6 feet tall, she was also built like a warrior, as the muscle rippling under the tight leather doublet and thin linen shirt showed her. "I'm an herbalist and a businessman," he said, studying her from under half-closed eyelids. "I don't care how you use your herbs." He paused for a moment, and she could feel his eyes roaming over her, more curious than hungry. "So you're the famous Queen of Hearts." Mimi attempted a nonchalant smile, but was not sure she succeeded. The man unnerved her with his smooth good looks and lazy smile. "Your fame precedes you, my queen." His tone of voice was a strange mixture of amusement and awe. "You're a gambler, so why the interest in medicinal herbs?" Mimi Mayo had not become an extraordinary card player without learning how to keep calm under pressure. Even though his questions were making her heart speed up and her eye twitch, she crossed one elegant leg over the other and leaned against the overstuffed back of her chair. "I help the house girls with female health woes," she lied. "There isn't a lack of those in a place like this. Men bring all kinds of ills inside their pants." She was rewarded with a ghost of a wince that faded as quickly as it appeared. "Can I trust you to keep my supplies coming on time?" Jack stood up in one sudden move that gave her a start. "Absolutely, my queen. Alfonso gave me your shopping list." He opened the cloth bag he had hanging from his belt, and she spied a sword hanging beside it. From the bag, he removed a couple small parcels tightly wrapped in brown paper that he handed to her. "Anything else I can help you with?" For the first time since her then-husband had bewitched her into believing he loved her, Mimi's belly ached with yearning. She shook her head. How ridiculous of her to want to kiss the man standing in her room, but his intense feline green eyes held so much promise, so much heat. She slid to her feet and hurried to find the coin to pay him. The quicker she did, the quicker he would be out of her room. She needed to clear her head. Men are the enemy. You shall not cavort with the enemy. Somehow, her usual mantra didn't seem to be working for her this time. The green of the Matamaridos plant slowly blended in with the yellow poppy leaves as Mimi milled it with the large wheel pestle in her wooden mortar. Nauseating sweet scent wafted from the Matamaridos, one of the only disadvantages to using the plant on her victims. No, not victims. They were men who victimized those who were less powerful than them. Bullies they all were, and criminals for sure. She'd have to neutralize the scent, or at least disguise it with another herb. Not that those fools would even notice. They were always in such a hurry to fuck her. She could feed them feces without them being none the wiser. But she didn't want to run any risks, so she meticulously prepared the mix that she would later stir into the strong, cheap wine of the establishment. Siri, the owner of the gaming house, leaned over with a sniff. "Oh, that's a god-awful smell," she exclaimed with a grimace. "You're sure they won't notice the stench?" Mimi snorted, her hands firmly on the handles of the wheel, pushing and pulling it along the narrow mortar. You would think, but they are too intoxicated by the promise of sex, she growled, her stomach churning at the thought. Their hunger for pleasure has muddled their brains. Will that be ready by tomorrow night? Siri asked, leaning back on the chair, her face obscured by shadows. The basement room Mimi used as her lab was dark, with only a bright light over the working table and no windows. Everything else was swallowed by darkness. Terry sent word that Linus is coming from a game. Her hands stopped as she lifted her gaze to the other woman. Linus, are you sure? Linus was a bigwig in town, the owner of many banks with close connections to the royal family. He was also infamous for the way he treated women, having gone through 3 wives already and a few maids in between. Siri nodded. Be extra careful with him. She lowered her voice and leaned over again, bracing her elbows on the edge of the table. His money and power didn't come to him through his family. He's a self-made man, and he was not squeamish about how he acquired his riches. Linus Friends was a legend among the male population, a beggar's child, who climbed through the ranks of society by stealing, blackmailing, beating, and even killing whoever stood in his way. He was rumored to have a vast knowledge of poisons and weapons, and always coming out on top. He would not be easy prey, unlike most of the other bastards that came to her card table. Who told you? One of the maids that serves his current wife, Siri said, steepling her fingers under her chin and closing her eyes. According to her, he was boasting to his minions about his coming visit and making bets. She also told me that his wife sustained another major beating less than a week ago, and that her life is hanging by a thread. She reopened her eyes and sighed. The maid is terrified of what he will do to her once the wife is not there for him to abuse anymore. She's sure he will turn on the servants again. Bile burned its way up her throat. Bastard! It was more of a snarl than a word. Don't worry, I'll make it extra special for him. The other woman brushed a hand over her blonde hair gathered on the top of her head with a large decorative pin. Her brown eyes studied Mimi. Aren't you afraid they will not fall asleep as fast as you want them to and rape you? Every time, Mimi's replied honestly. But my potions are very efficient and getting better every day. The sedative works almost instantly, and then all I have to do is wait. I remove some of their clothes so they think we were getting busy and wait for them to wake up limp and useless. It didn't necessarily solve the problem of their physical and emotional abuse tendencies, but they would never use their dicks as a power tool again. All right, I trust you, Siri said, standing up. Her life-wise brown eyes seemed to pop, surrounded by the heavy black coal she used as a mask of sorts. Mimi had seen her without makeup and knew no one would recognize her, especially the men who attended the gaming whoring house. Before I go, can you talk to little Megan again? She still won't look me in the eye. Mimi sighed. She couldn't blame the girl, who was barely 17, for being timid after the abuse she endured from her husband. Siri had bought her from him in order to save her from a lifetime of pain. Slavery was not legal, but widely accepted nevertheless. Not that the owner of the Ace in the Hole wanted the girl as a slave. Siri had her freedom papers drafted and ratified immediately. After her conspirator and the only person who knew about her secret potions left the room, Mimi searched through her impressive collection of herbs and powders. She was not yet sure of what she was looking for, but this Linus deserved a special concoction. Something that would not only rob him of his virility, but would also make him rue his life. Wolfsbane was too lethal. She didn't want to kill him, no matter how tempting it was. She only wanted to make him very sick. She rummaged through another basket and pulled out a wilting white flower still attached to its root. Maybe apple root would do the trick. By the time it ran through Linus's system, he would wish for death.